Hey everybody, thanks for joining us. Last week I think we did a little Q&A for this session, and so I thought I'd open it up for that again. So go ahead and unmute yourself or type in. Let's ask a question, and either at the end of this session or also in the next Mystic Vibration session, we'll go through and we'll do a practice. So let's go ahead and field your questions.
And I think Greg said it. Go ahead and unmute yourself. You can raise your hand in the chat if you'd like, or just type in any of your questions. And I know to type in it sometimes takes a little minute longer. Could you share a little bit about the high heart?
So the high heart is the vessel that's like right here in the upper chest, and it's an energetic vessel that looks like it's like a tortoise shape or turtle shaped. So a lot of times when we do our Lama yoga or we do our materialization breath, our chin is going down and touching our chest. Or sometimes when you pray, you have the tendency to lower your head. And so part of what's happening when you do that is you're stimulating this aspect of the high heart. And so on one level, you could say you're going beyond the senses or beyond the form, and the form being your body. We think of our mind, our emotions, and our body being like these different things, but you know, in a way they are, in a way they aren't. A lot of our emotions and our thoughts are byproducts of our physical sensations, our physical experiences. And so for a while, for most people, we are experiencing emotions of mind, but like of the body or because of the body. And as we develop and we become more refined, we begin to have flashes of what you would call the astral body. And the astral body is starting to experience emotion beyond the form. So you're going beyond your normal energy body, your normal aura, and your physical responses, the homeostatic emotions that we would call low emotions, even our normal heart. There's a level or degree of activation, but it is nothing compared to when we begin to experience the astral body and the astral realm. The level or degree that the heart activates is substantial. And you could say when you start to touch that astral realm or that astral component, it feels a lot like a starry night, like a dark night that's, the sky is full of stars. And sometimes a practitioner will even kind of quiet the mind and reflect on like their feelings or tap into, how we do body awareness. And we go, okay, I'm gonna feel the body, I'm gonna feel emotion. And they'll start to get flashes of like a starry sky, a night sky full of stars. And again, they're beginning to experience the astral realm. And so, there's different ways to kind of do that practice where you start to experience the astral. Um, the big aspect that I would say is that working of the aspect of the nervous system, the involuntary part of the nervous system, where you work vagal tone and then you try to correct the dysregulation that comes from fight flight. And as you go through and begin to balance these two aspects, um, we begin to experience deeper levels of divine intelligence. And as we begin to experience deeper levels of divine intelligence, then at some point we begin to experience divine love. We begin experiencing deeper levels of not just human love, but of divine love. And when we begin to experience divine love, that is another way of saying you're beginning to experience the astral, the astral realm, the astral body. And again, the stimulation of the high heart is one of the ways to begin to experience that. If you think of the idea of the materialization breath, the reason why it's important to do and the reason why it works is we're going beyond our um, intellectual mind. We're going beyond the senses. You're having some sort of difficulty, or you're wanting to concretize or physicalize a prayer, you're wanting to bring in some goal or have some area of healing, right? And if the normal repetition of the mind, the normal repetition of intellect was able to do it, you wouldn't feel the need or the drive to sit down and do materialization, right? So you're trying to bring something new in, which intellect is not very good at. Once it comes in, it can maintain it. But as far as bringing something new in, that is an intuitive process. And so you're having to go beyond the senses. And so you sit and you visualize your goal, and you hold it in the heart, and that helps to integrate it and helps to connect with it. And then you do the materialization breath where you chins down, you inhale, and then head up and you exhale, right? That act, every time you go down, you're touching the high heart and you're stimulating that astral component, and your mind for just a moment goes beyond the form, right? You're reaching outside of the repetition of your mind, the momentum of all the things you've already put in motion and think about, and your opinions and the cause and effect of normal everyday life. And you're reaching beyond that aspect. And this is important for helping to bring in something new. You're engaging the intuitive mind, and then eventually you're bringing it in and concretizing it into the energy body, into the mind. And as you kind of bring that idea back in, eventually the intellect also engages it. So it starts off with an observation. It starts off with going beyond the intuitive, or excuse me, beyond the senses with the intuitive mind. And then you bring it back. And then because you've had an experience, you've had this observation, now the intellect can work with that. The intellect couldn't go beyond the senses before, but with this new idea, the intellect can take it and run, right? And so if you look at the idea of karma, you know, you hear different people talk about it different ways. Some people will just say anything that's going on in their life that's maybe negative or wrong is karma. And then you hear the discussions where you talk about it as cause and effect. But if you look at some of the ancient practices at addressing karmic issues, a lot of it has to do with calming down the dysregulation of the sympathetic nervous system, what we call fight flight. And again, that part of the nervous system is directly associated with the intellect. That part of the mind sees things as a thing. It sees things very differently than we do with our intuitive mind. And so again, even if we're dealing with a karmic issue here, part of what you're trying to address is not what you're thinking about or what's happening in your life, what the karmic issue is. It's how we're thinking about it. It's the thought process. It's the intuitive mind being engaged. It's that ability to go beyond the senses, which means also that the sympathetic nervous system, which is fight flight, is being regulated. And if you look at it, it makes sense because that part of the nervous system and that part of the mind doesn't allow something new in, and it doesn't release things. It is always in repetition, and it's always maintaining something. And so a lot of times when we have some issue that we're trying to address or trying to heal or karmic pattern that we might be trying to break, part of the issue is intellect is part of the problem. And that repetition of the nervous system, that dysregulation of the sympathetic nervous system, keeps us engaged into what is causing the problem, the karmic issue, the area of healing, whatever it might be. And so again, coming back to the high heart or intuition or being able to touch that astral component changes how you think. Instead of thinking about things as a thing, you think about things as a process. And in that, your problem solving skills become very heightened, in your ability to release or let go of something or move away from something is heightened. And also your ability to learn. Your ability to learn a lesson is in the intuitive mind, not the intellectual mind. The intellectual mind will push back on any sort of movement that you have in resolving that issue, as much as it doesn't want to have to deal with that issue. At the same time, it doesn't also want to let go of it. You know, kind of the mystical gossip or the mystical chat around the campfire is that, like, the intellectual mind can let go of something, but it leaves claw marks all over it. And the joke being that intellect never really lets go of anything. It just claws it up, it just holds on to it. And the more you try to shift it, the deeper it digs its claws in. And so again, the high heart is an aspect of touching that astral realm and touching the intuition and the idea of going beyond the senses that then can come in and shift or change or even transform the intellect, the nervous system, the body, and how we progress in our life. So
Thank you. And then Linda, and then we have a chat if we have time as well.
hey.
Hi there. Listening to you talk here about the high heart and the development of that, it makes me wonder about, as we develop that, are we able to see or sense something that, I'm going to say it in the light of that can affirm our faith in something bigger? Because the question's coming out of experiences I've been having this past few weeks, and in talking to many of the others in my circle, a lot of us light beings, light workers, seem to be having a similar experience right now of, we're really kind of experiencing a crisis of faith.
Yeah.
And it's really challenging for us. We're experiencing a lot of disappointment in ourselves, disappointment in our abilities, disappointment in what's happening, of course, around the world, and just really wondering much more deeply, which, I kind of understand that that's the way this game is set up. It's like, you got to experience things deeply and kind of in a harsh way to move or to learn or to whatever. And I take a lot of issue with that particular process, but we don't have to go into that right now. But
Mhm.
the idea that, you know, we're tested and we know we're tested, but right now it seems incredibly intense. And as you were
It
talking
does seem
about the high
intense.
heart, yeah,
Yeah.
as we were talking about the
Mhm.
high heart, I was just thinking, okay, so we just keep doing the things we're doing because I am discovering that the tools are amazing in helping me address the things in front of me and moving me away from my intellectual mind. And as I've just framed it today to somebody. I said, you know, instead of turning so towards the issue, turn and look the other way and let go so that you can open up space for light to come in to help you.
Mhm.
Anyway, I would just love to hear your thoughts on
Yeah, you're not the only one that has said something like that to me in the last like couple of months, but it seems to be even in the last few weeks a little bit more intense. And you know, it's one of those things where even when I wake up, I'm like, is it me? Like, you know, well, what is it that's going on? And you know, some of it I would say, you know, there is a change of an age. So, you know, the normal parameters that would bring us some sort of like inner stability are falling away. They'd bring us inner stability, but they also might be causing us some suffering. And so some of that stuff is falling away. It'll reform again. But you know, if you look at in the world, like there was a kind of order for a while, be it good or bad, there was a kind of an order, and it is not there anymore.
right.
And so there's that component. And of course that's going to impact us. But I would say um you know, if you look at the idea of, you know, the great flood back in the day, you know, with Noah, that was a physical flood, you know, I'm not sure. You know, of course, people take it very literal, but I'm not sure that it was necessarily a physical flood. I think there was a kind of inner world kind of flood. And there are times where the idea of there being like a downpour or a kind of rain of sorts, like a spiritual water or living water that comes down. And in that, there is a little bit of purification, but I would say people's karmic issues get a little bit accelerated or brought more to the surface. Like they're kind of a little bit more in everybody's face, rather, regardless if you've been good or bad or however you want to say that. You know what I mean? Like there is this kind of I don't even know if I'd call it an acceleration, but like a bringing up of something. And you know, it comes back to what we were just talking about is, you know, like you go back and you look at the idea, like there was the Zuni prophecy that was, I don't know, a few hundred years ago, you know, about something in the future. And it talks about how there's almost like two worlds that are living side by side or overlapping. And basically, some people have lost their connection and, you know, are behaving like a crazy person. And then there's people who are, you know, stepping up their game and evolving at a much more rapid rate, you know, and I remember looking at that probably, I don't know, 20, 25 years ago. And I was like, yeah, I think it's now, or, you know, da 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 da, you know, 20 years ago. And, you know, I don't know. But with things going on the way they are now, you can really see how, you know, how we talk about the intuitive mind and the intellect, where the thing with the intellect it's a really good impersonator. You know, it's a really good impersonator of what it thinks we should be, or what good looks like, or what spiritual looks like, or what goodness is, or, you know, whatever it is. And in the face of things arising, the process of using your intuitive faculties to go through and deal with the things that might be crossing your path are how your soul is going to evolve. Regardless if it's now, 50 years ago, 500 years ago, it doesn't matter. That's what's happening. But there's times where more things are in the environment than other times. And I would say this is one of those times, you know. And so that idea of really cultivating the intuitive mind is key here. And in that, the rate of development is faster. And yeah, the external world is changing, or, you know, doing whatever it's doing, but it's more about the inner practice than it is about the external situation. And you know, I think we all do it to a certain extent. We look to the external for some sort of validation, and in years past we could get it, but I'd say now we're really not getting it like we did, like maybe 10, 20, 30 years ago. And so we're really having to depend more on our internal guidance. And I would say any time that we have experiences with the divine, be it a teacher, divine intelligence, you know, anything of that nature, even the soul to a certain extent, is there's going to be times where we deeply feel the presence and feel guided and everything is just like peaceful. And there's going to be a time where there's a withdrawal of it, so that we have to build the muscles of being able to identify it and turn away from the things that might pull us from the path and turn it inward and really delve deeper into something deeper to like emanate it and bring it forth into the life, or into the form. And without that, we really wouldn't grow and evolve. And you know, I have a Buddhist friend, like he cracks me up because every time, you know, I have a bunch of Buddhist friends, but this one in particular, he's a very sweet man. And I'll say to him, "Oh, it's a crazy world outside," and he'll kind of laugh a little bit, and he goes, "You know, whatever is in your mind, you see outside, like you see outside of you." And he goes, "So if you feel crazy inside, you see crazy out there." And it's like, yeah, but it is kind of crazy out there. And you know, it's a very Buddhist thing. It's like it's all transient, it'll pass, you know. It's a very big picture look at things. And he kind of laughs about it, and he knows what I'm talking about, but it's still that idea of what is being a true human being isn't the intellectual part, it's the intuitive part. The intellectual part is good about taking care of the body and helping us to thrive in life, but we are soul having a human experience, and that human experience is directly associated with that intuitive part of the mind. And for me, it's like almost every day I have to kind of keep reminding myself, you know, it's more about the intuition than it is about the way things are in my life, you know. And I keep having these little things like, am I doing something wrong? Am I missing something? Or, you know, what's up? But it's really, things just aren't the way they used to be, and they're not finished in becoming what the new thing is going to become.
Right.
And, you know, it's going to take a little while. And for us not to lose ourselves in those waves is really the key thing. And so, you know, I hear you when you say like, ugh, God, what am I doing? Is it me? Is it this? You know, what am I supposed to be doing? And
I recently heard the story of Jesus walking on water reframed in an interesting way as an example, a metaphor of being able to really be able to control our emotional bodies, water representing the emotional body, right?
sure,
And then him
yeah,
walking on it, controlling his emotions, and in the midst of an incredible storm. And
right,
and like that feels like where so many of us are right now. We're really working
yeah,
to try
yeah,
and not do that, try and maintain that calm in the midst of the storm.
right,
But it's I mean, so many times you just want to shut down and say, "Ugh, I
yeah.
can't."
Yeah. Oh, I hear you. I
Yeah.
hear you. And I think that is like you were saying, like you have your circle of people. I think that's when it's good to have a circle of people.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Because it can be very isolating. You could really like personalize it and go, I'm doing this or that. But when the whole group is having like a very similar experience, for one, it helps you to have like that perspective, but you also can kind of be supportive of each other and kind of lean on each other a little bit with all that.
Right. And it does
Yeah,
help. Even hearing you just
yeah,
say
it
other
does.
people have said it to you recently, it's like, okay,
Yeah,
so there really is something up right
uh,
now.
uh, people from all kinds of circles. It's not even just spiritual circles. Like people are saying it to me. Even like vendors and people who are into none of this stuff.
Mm.
They're using slightly different words, but not that different. But they're saying the same thing.
Yeah. Oh.
You know.
Well, thank you. I appreciate hearing,
Yeah.
some of the dialogue around it. Thank you.
Yeah. And then usually they go, because they know what I'm into, they'll go, but it's almost over soon, right? And I'll go, oh, okay.
Soon is relative.
The world's a changing. Yeah, right. So we need to jump over to the mystic vibration, but we can still do maybe another question or two.
Well, Reverend Anthony, you had your hand raised. I did take a couple pictures of the other chats.
Okay. Hey, and
So I had a question, Greg, and again, based on what everybody is going through on the planet, and we know that there's an acceleration from the Piscean age into the Atlantean age, which is obviously an air sign from a water sign. So do you think that this is an aspect of that acceleration? Is that everybody is quote unquote kind of, we're crazy with what we see because of this acceleration?
I do.
Yeah.
I do. I have to remind myself every day that I'm not that crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
I don't know that I believe myself, but I'm trying.
Well, there's so much contradiction. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even within,
Yeah, I
when you
agree.
see without, and
Yeah.
we understand intellect and intuition, but it's like what you see
Yeah.
is we can't fake it, And I
Right.
just to see what a lot of people are going through, and not just individually, but planetarily and karmically. And I mean,
Yeah.
as humanity, it's
Yeah.
all the more reason for what we're doing. I'm grateful. So
Yeah.
thanks.
Yeah, you're so welcome. Always good to talk with you.